Good afternoon. I hope that all of you enjoyed your lunch and had an opportunity to network with one another and are ready for what I think is going to be a fantastic afternoon, starting with a terrific panel. My name is Paula Glover. I am the president of the Alliance to Save Energy. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I will be your moderator this afternoon. And we are going to be talking about investment, competitiveness, and jobs, right? And so for us in the U.S., those are three things that are very much important to us. How much we're going to be investing and what that rate is going to be on that investing, ensuring that we have a competitive economy and growth, and obviously job creation. And so I would love to introduce our panelists right now. First, His Excellency Nikos Sappos, who is the Deputy Minister of Energy for Greece. Please come join me. We also have His Excellency Sharif Salim Al-Alama. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and I apologize if I have not. He is the Undersecretary for Energy and Petroleum Affairs, the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure for the UAE. His Excellency. We also have with us today Mr. Emmanuel Normand, Chief Sustainability Officer for Saint-Gobain. Please, Emmanuel. Ms. Ingrid Gabriella Hoven, Managing Director for GIZ. Is that how you like to is it GIZ? Mm-hmm. Correct. Yes. Please welcome Ingrid. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Judith Curtin-Darling, General Secretary for the Industrial and European Trade Union. Please, Judith, join us on stage.
Hi.
Pleasure.
Hi. 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 Good to see you. Hi.
So as I shared before, I'm with the Alliance, and I want to just take a few moments to share a little bit about what is going on with us and what we're working on in the States and why this conversation is so incredibly important in this moment. You know, we at the Alliance, we consider ourselves a coalition. We are a bipartisan coalition, bicameral bipartisan, and what that means is that all of our representatives come from both sides of the aisle and both chambers in our Congress. So we have senators as well as members of the House of Representatives, Democrats and Republicans, and we do that intentionally because we believe that energy efficiency is a nonpartisan issue, and it has been for 35 years, although it seems to be changing a little bit today. But it's something that we can all agree on in terms of our energy system. And what we believe at the Alliance, and certainly that I believe, the case that I always make, is that efficiency is central to our energy system. It's not just central to a transition, it is central to the system in and of itself. And every sector of our industry and every fuel source does interact with efficiency in some way, and if it doesn't, we certainly would want it to. In addition to water, which is not something that we're talking about now, but that is deeply embedded in, I think, the work that we all do and things that we should care about. And so at the Alliance, we are bringing together a coalition of people, business, policy members, members from environmental organizations, academia, the public at large, all together to form a coalition, and we collaborate on the kinds of solutions that we think, the policy solutions that we think will move us forward. We are deeply steeped in equity. We will always be. We're really concerned and committed to ensuring that the benefits of energy efficiency impact every single community, is touched by every community that is served in the States. And that is central. But we also need to I will acknowledge that last November, we had a bit of a turn, right? So our previous administration under President Joe Biden made historic investments, not only in clean energy, but particularly in energy efficiency, through our Inflation Reduction Act and our tax credits, through our Greenhouse Gas and Reduction Fund, which made energy efficiency an enabling technology before you could install solar on homes. And the IIJA. And all of that now, quite frankly, with the proposed budget, is up for grabs. And we're not quite sure what will happen. But we at the Alliance remain committed. We are committed to implementation and ensuring that the dollars that are out there are spent well and create the benefits that we expect them to. In addition, and as well as continuing to really push our government and our policymakers to see the benefits of efficiency. The budget is not finalized, so I don't, all is not lost. I remain hopeful. But it is really important at a time in our country, at the States, when we're talking a lot about affordability. This is not the time that we want to get rid of efficiency. This is the time that we want to lean in. And so with that, I'm really excited about the conversation that we're about to have today. And these terrific speakers. And I'm going to actually invite Sharif to join us first up at the podium and present some opening remarks.
Sure. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is really a pleasure to join you today at the 10th Annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency. Today, we are here to discuss how energy efficiency can drive investments, enhance competitiveness, and support job creation, all of which are pillars of a sustainable, inclusive, and a resilient global economy. Energy is not just a commodity. It is the lifeline of every productive sector. In today's world, a world that is going through a rapid transformation, expanding digitalization, and witnessing fierce global competition, reducing energy costs while maintaining or increasing output has become a decisive factor in long-term business success. Energy efficiency enables businesses to achieve exactly that, lowering operating costs, improving productivity, and making companies more resilient to price volatility and supply chain risks. In the UAE, we see energy efficiency not only as a tool for decarbonization, but also a powerful lever to strengthen our economy. We're supporting industries and enterprises to reduce costs, improve energy security, and enhance operational performance. These efforts help attract investment, support high-quality job creation, and foster innovation and competitiveness across key sectors. However, challenges do remain. Despite its clear economic benefits, the pace of progress is often constrained by barriers, such as limited access to finance, low awareness, misalignment in incentives, and high upfront costs, particularly in emerging markets. This is why the UAE announced its intention to establish the Global Energy Efficiency Alliance, also known as GEA, during COP29 in Baku, in support of the UAE consensus and the global goal of doubling the energy efficiency improvement rate from the historical average of 2% to over 4% annually by the year 2030. Today, we are proud to officially launch GEA here in Brussels, reaffirming our commitment to placing energy efficiency at the forefront of the international energy and climate agenda. This effort comes at a critical moment, as we are currently off track. The global energy efficiency improvement rate remains below 1.5% annually. And at this pace, we will fall short of achieving our decarbonization and net zero targets. Yet, we know that no single nation or alliance can do this alone. What we need is a global implementation agenda, guided by credible national plans and supported by real investment. An implementation agenda focused on measurable progress through enhanced NDCs, national energy and climate plans, investment pipelines, and supportive policy frameworks. GEA complements other high-level initiatives, such as Mission Efficiency Partnership, the G20 Energy Transitions Working Group, and the Global Energy Transition Forum. Together, these combined efforts must be mutually reinforcing, not fragmented, ensuring that knowledge, finance, and best practices flow across borders and sectors. There is no doubt that energy efficiency is one of the most cost-effective tools available to support economic growth, reduce emissions, and build more competitive and future-ready economies. It creates local value, enhances energy access, supports electrification, and unlocks innovation, all while delivering near-term results. With the right partnerships, policies, and investment frameworks in place, we can turn this vast potential into tangible outcomes for businesses, workers, and communities everywhere. The UAE remains committed to supporting this agenda and to working with all of you to accelerate action where it matters the most. Let us seize this pivotal moment to align our efforts and champion solutions that can be scaled up. The energy transition is reality in motion, but to truly rise to the challenge, we must accelerate our pace with urgency, with unity, and unwavering commitment to a more sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Nikos, I want to invite you to make some opening remarks.
You want me to do it from here or there?
Wherever you're most comfortable.
I'll do it from here. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'd like to offer the perspective of my country, Greece. You know, we have made a strategic commitment to energy efficiency. If you look at, you know, this government that I represent came into power in the summer of 2019. And if you look over these 6 years, we've invested, depending on where you put the boundary, you know, we've committed 4 to 5 billion euros on energy efficiency programs. Again, depending on the definition, that's close to 2% of our GDP that we've spent cumulatively over time on energy efficiency programs, right? So this is a very serious commitment that we have made. And if you ask why we've made this commitment, I think of a triangle. One is competitiveness, right? To help our industry, our businesses, to lower energy costs. The second thing is jobs. You know, one of the really important things about efficiency is that at least in Greece, it has very high local content and local value added. We make things in Greece. We use equipment made in Greece. We have a vibrant, you know, solar water heating industry in Greece that we can leverage. And so the benefits get diffused to the entire country. And the third corner is energy insecurity. You know, we still have the after effects of a very severe economic crisis that hit our country. And so we're still coming down from very high levels of energy security, and the percentage of households that say they can't heat their homes adequately in the wintertime, and trying to do something to address that. So that's the triangle that we operate in, and the reason we've made such a strategic commitment to energy efficiency. At the same time, you know, when you look at the efficacy of our efficiency programs, I think we still have a lot to learn from one another about how to do things better. And I want to focus on 3 areas in particular: scale, private capital, and cost-benefit analysis. Scale, when you think about the public sector and you're trying to touch hundreds of thousands or millions of households, this is not something that the public sector is very good at, being able to go and touch, you know, hundreds of thousands of households, right? So we struggle oftentimes to do things quickly, efficiently, and in having a pleasant experience for the user. At the same time, we also struggle with the different uses of energy efficiency. It's one thing to do a single family house. It's another thing to go into an apartment building with 10, 20, 30 different users. It's a different thing to go to a private hotel or a public hospital, which then takes you into public procurement rules and how you can actually incentivize investment. So on the one hand, we need scale. On the other hand, we need tailoring to understand that different users have different needs. The second thing is leveraging private capital. You know, the numbers that I talked about are largely public sector numbers in terms of euros and grants, and I think we still need to do a much better job at leveraging the private sector and private capital. You know, we hear a lot in this forum and another forum that efficiency pays for itself, but we have a lot of difficulty convincing people to then make the investment decisions that seem to make sense. So we need to figure out how to do that better so that then we can move much faster. And the last thing is doing the cost-benefit analysis right. You know, we spent a lot of money. We have a sense of the benefits in terms of energy, or at least the forecasted benefits in terms of energy. but there are a lot of benefits that we don't quite capture in terms of public health and comfort and quality of life, that in order to justify these investments and make sure that they're well spent, I think we need to do a better job at capturing that data and analyzing it so that we can demonstrate the effectiveness and the return on the investment that we're making. So very much appreciative of the opportunity to be on the stage, but also to be with you over these 2 days, primarily because we're always looking for ways to spend money better and to deploy capital more efficiently. And so really looking forward to hearing from other countries about how they've tackled these challenges so that we can sort of take the good ideas of what works and bring them to Greece. So thank you.
Wonderful. Emmanuel, tell us some about the wonderful ideas and the things that you're doing, and share with you your opening thoughts.
Okay, no, thanks for inviting me for this panel. So a few words about Saint-Gobain. Saint-Gobain is a 360 years old, 50 billion euro company. We employ directly 170,000 employees in 80 countries, and indirectly millions of jobs to install our solutions for new build, for retrofitting existing buildings. We produce locally solutions for improving the built environment. And those jobs that are local, that cannot be localized in Saint-Gobain or outside Saint-Gobain. And energy efficiency is absolutely central in what we do. On the side of our processes, many of them are energy intensive, and obviously across our value chain, for increased resilience of buildings. So I want to look at both sides, starting with our processes. Most of our processes, around 40% of our cost is energy. Meaning, I mean, energy efficiency is not only a must, and it's central to our competitiveness and our resilience. But it's also a precondition for the transition to low carbon processes. Simply electrifying our process, we worked with very high heat, does not provide efficiency. Yes, provide a bit of efficiency, 10 to 15%, but it's not enough to offset a price difference between electricity, between decarbonized gas compared to natural gas that is often in a ratio from 1 to 3 to 1 to 5. So we need to do much more. And that's really around working on the energy efficiency of our own processes, deeply rooted in our DNA. It's what we call industrial excellence, looking at all the losses that we have to understand how to limit those losses. It's around dedicated investments to better insulate our processes, to reuse energy, increase circularity. When we use recycled glass to replace sand in the production of glass, you reduce by 100 degrees the furnace temperature. So it's a major lever for energy efficiency. The use of digital technologies in order really to make sure that we only use the energy that we need and not more. Looking at our motors, compressor, all over the place in our plants. And one point that is important is that efficiency is a very important lever in terms of innovation, because it obliges us to look really in the details of what we do. But again, it will not be enough. It's not just by energy efficiency that we will be able to electrify deeply our processes. Working also on the cost of energy is a must. Now looking at the other side, the side of the buildings, 40% of the energy is being consumed in the building. There's a massive need of electrification. We know that. But better insulation of the buildings, better energy efficiency of the buildings is providing resilience. You said it, resilience to the system, particularly to reduce peak demand, to help the energy system to face the future investment cliff, to provide better comfort for the occupants of the buildings, helping to reduce the energy bill, particularly when prices of energy are skyrocketing, had we experienced it a few years ago. And to remember that simply installing a heat pump or an air conditioning device in a poorly insulated building, I mean, you don't drive a car with open windows and full air conditioning. It's exactly the same. And I want to give some numbers that I find really striking. A recent report published by the Energy Transition Commission is showing that when you stop heating a building, a house in Norway, after 5 hours, you reduce the temperature in the house of 1 degree Celsius. When you do it in the UK, it's by 3 degrees Celsius. See the impact of the difference of insulation level. A recent report by our European Association for Insulation, EURIMA, showed that when lowering peak demand via better insulation of the buildings could reduce future investment costs in the electricity grid in Europe by up to 35%. We also looked in France, that has implemented recently in the regulation so-called minimum energy performance standards for building. So making that the poorly rated buildings in terms of energy efficiency will not be able to be sold or to be rented. We have seen in all the transactions in residential area in the last 2 years, a price premium for A and B rated buildings of up to 25% compared to the average on the market, which is at D, and a price negative, so for the F and J buildings compared to the D of around 25%. A price cap of up to 50%. And in the US, A-class office buildings are having a price premium up to 25% compared to traditional buildings, meaning a protection for the real estate owners in terms of future asset value. We all know that it's not going fast enough, while the technical solutions are existing, so we need to change gear.
Thank you so much. You've got me excited. Ingrid, please tell us your opening thoughts.
Yeah, also many thanks for having me. And I would like perhaps to share with you a perspective of for those countries, emerging economies and developing countries where GIZ is active. GIZ is a German international agency. We are working on behalf of the German government and especially also for the European Commission in emerging economies and developing countries. Our portfolio in this field of energy transition has a business volume of 1.4 billion euros, and we are operating 60 countries. And perhaps let me share a couple of thoughts or lessons learned, what we have observed in those undertakings. The first thing is about investments. So when you look what is happening right now, only 15%, 15% of investments in energy efficiency actually reaches emerging economies and developing countries, although 2/3 of the global population is living there. Apparently, so there is a lack of incentives and opportunities, but we know that, of course, in order to achieve a higher level of energy efficiency, and this has been said also this morning by Fatih Birol, we have really to come to the trillions and not only to the billions of investments. So one very important point is how do we leverage the public funding that is available either in domestic settings, the domestic budget, or in international cooperation to leverage the private sector and domestic commercial lending. One possibility is that we actually implemented in Brazil our guarantee schemes that are sitting with commercial banks and that are being perceived as a risk reducer. Because commercial banks at the local level often lack the experience of dealing with energy efficiency projects. They don't know how to do the risk assessment. They don't have the data at hand in order to assess, is this really a good business case or not? So a little bit risk averse to stick perhaps to the more traditional projects. So if they provide them with a guarantee funding, plus actually the advice that they need in order to have the right set of criteria to assess new incoming energy efficiency programs, you see more mobilization at the level of the domestic financial market for energy efficiency projects. And this is actually exactly the point in case, the experience that we made in Brazil. But when you look to the other side, those that actually present a bankable project, do they have sufficient knowledge about what is bankable and what not? 90% of economic activities in the so-called Global South is being performed by small and medium-sized enterprises. So, of course, the big ones, the big enterprises are important, they are front runners, they showcase what is doable. But actually the vast majority of SMEs, they lack the knowledge. So, in order to stimulate more investment into energy efficiency projects, you first have to resemble data at the business level. To make a business case, they have to prove finally to banks, as SME, that what they would like to invest is going to pay back by actually energy savings. And often this data is not sufficiently available. So this is an important thing that we also are providing: advice, knowledge sharing, also taking data from databases that is provided by EAA, but we actually customize it so that SMEs can benefit from this data and can elaborate the right project proposals and receive funding for those purposes. This is the second point. Thirdly, how do we come to scale? I think what is core and center is really to partner. We are a bilateral agency, but finally, in these sectors like energy efficiency, we cooperate with the Agence Française de Développement, with the European Commission, with IRENA, with other actually stakeholders in the sector, with the Green Climate Fund, because we know in order to really create these platforms that can be transformative for a specific sector or specific country, you have to bring expertise and the leverage of many stakeholders into play. And therefore, we very much promote the idea to come together, to mobilize financial actors, but additionally also the technical expertise that is needed. And my last point is perhaps on jobs, but additionally on skills. We know already that we are observing worldwide a growing skills gap to deal with the new economy. So if decision makers, if the business, if they don't see that they have the right skills at hand to really benefit from the new economy, this is going to delay also investments and especially implementation, and has a severe CO2 impact. And this is now actually, this can be measured, and we therefore also promote the idea that we all together, the international community, should invest more into skills development, reskilling, upskilling, but also making the society fit for the new economic opportunities, because this also would mean that transition is going to be easier and will provide more development opportunities for people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Judith, everyone has mentioned jobs or skills. No one knew that you would be here to talk about it, so we're really excited to hear your thoughts. Please.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad I've come last in a way, because I'm going to bounce off comments by all of the previous speakers. Maybe to say that I apologize that I come from a very Eurocentric perspective, representing 7 million manufacturing, mining, and energy workers across 39 European countries. But the starting point is that for us, energy efficiency is the most sensible part of the policy process when it comes to the transition. And it's often the part which gets the least attention. So a lot of the attention is on emission mitigation and reduction. A lot of the attention is on the energy transition and the shift. Very important debates and very important instruments, but actually energy efficiency comes back to a point that Nikos made, is about a triple bottom line. It's about the reduced cost for industry and the consumer in a context that we have really rising energy poverty, astronomical energy prices, which critically undermine the competitiveness of industries in regions like Europe. It's about jobs, because energy efficiency is an enormous job creation machine. whether it's about guaranteeing, maintaining jobs in existing industries or about creating jobs, and I will come back to that. And finally, and it hasn't been said explicitly, but I think it's very important to say, it's critically important for the environment and us achieving our global climate objectives. So this triple bottom line for us as trade unions makes energy efficiency a really critical element in what we're arguing for collectively as an international trade union movement for a just transition framework at international level, at European level, national, sectoral, company, local level. And energy efficiency comes into each of these points. And just coming back to the last point, if that social dimension isn't factored strongly into energy efficiency policies, then fundamentally bottlenecks are created by the fact that there isn't a workforce, a skilled workforce available to actually implement the policy objectives. So it's about joined up government, about joined up policy, and about ensuring when you're building those partnerships and alliances that actually you have all of the actors at the table, including organised labour and including the social partners and the labour market actors, to avoid that you end up with that bottleneck. For us, this is just transition in a big picture. I thought I would jump on what the colleague, sorry, I've forgotten everybody's name, that's terrible on a panel, but the colleague from Saint-Gobain was saying about this two dimensions, which is for us as an industrial union the critical thing. On the one hand, we have energy efficiency in terms of the lowest hanging fruit, the building sector and renovation in buildings, potentially enormous job creation. And to give you a little bit of some figures, in Europe, in the EU, I should say as a Brit, sorry, between 2000 and 2022, we saw over 2 million full-time equivalent jobs created as a result. Now, if you think about where those jobs are created, in Europe, for every 1 million euros invested in energy efficient renovations, you're talking about an enormous exponential growth of jobs. Partly, one part of that is directly in the construction sector, local jobs, local labour markets, and jobs which can't necessarily be exported or relocated. But the bigger part of the job creation is in the value chain, in basic industries, in the production of glass, cement, steel, all of the foundation industries which feed into the renovation wave, creating demand in the economy, which then drives and promotes competitiveness, promotes economic growth, promotes further job creation. On the other hand, you have the challenge, as was said, of energy efficiency in those industries which are incredibly energy intensive. And energy efficiency is, we definitely haven't exhausted in Europe the potential of energy efficiency in foundation industries. But we also have to recognize that we work on innovation and technological leaps, where the efficiency comes before the next technological leap, and electrification being one for some of those energy-intensive industries, biogas, biomethane, and other technologies, hydrogen, CCS being technology leaps for others of those foundation industries. But in every case, energy efficiency is the starting point for ensuring the future of those industries. And we're talking about millions of jobs in Europe. We have 30 million industrial workers in Europe. 8 million workers in energy-intensive industries. Those workers are in the most precarious situation today because of the high energy prices. So having a very assertive industrial policy with energy efficiency right at its center, both in terms of driving the renovation wave, as it's called in Europe, and in terms of the industrial decarbonisation and energy efficiency agenda and industrial innovation, is actually critical for maintaining all of those existing jobs, and then ensuring this big employment creation on the other side. It's a positive agenda for workers in the energy transition, and it's an agenda which has just transition right at its heart if those jobs which are created and maintained are good quality jobs. And that's where involving trade unions in the partnership is absolutely critical to ensure that the jobs that we are creating through this agenda deliver good, well-paid, secure jobs which can ensure that people are then not at the end of the month struggling to pay their energy bill, struggling to make the ends meet, but actually are able then to consume in the society a further wave of the economic development, which really brings us to the point of investment, competitiveness and jobs. Thanks.
Thank you, Judith. So, Sharif, never was there a better time to announce a new initiative. And I would say that your 4 panelists have all introduced a whole bunch of challenges that seem ripe for the Global Energy Efficiency Alliance. And so my question to you is, what's next? How can this alliance help countries and industry to overcome these barriers and continue to move on this progress?
Paula, maybe we start off with real facts. Today, we know that the way that the world actually consumes energy is definitely not going to be economical and sustainable. 66% of the energy that is consumed never actually reaches to the end use. There is a lot of inefficiencies in our system. So you can talk about inefficiencies in transmission lines, in old buildings, in inefficient vehicles. And that's why we thought that it's very important that we create an alliance where we can get together all the key players. And this alliance is not only focused on getting governments on board. We want the private sector to play a major role over here. Innovators, technology providers, financial institutes, basically all the key entities that have the major levers to make this kind of a transition when it comes to energy efficiency doable. Simple example is with the 66%. I remember one of my young colleagues were telling me, it's like you buy 3 cups of coffee and you only drink 1, and you throw away 2. That's really not economical. Yeah. Through the Energy Efficiency Alliance, I think this is a very good opportunity. And for us, we believe that a lot of the developed countries are really doing their part. We see excellent progress when it comes to developed countries. My concern and our concern is how can we support the Global South? Yeah, that is where we see a major challenge. We have opened up the door for this alliance. As the UAE, we will be chairing the first period of this alliance. We will be also the secretariat. We have developed a comprehensive platform where each of the countries that do join in will have access to loads of information, it being either policy kits, it being either energy efficiency strategies, it being in terms of financing opportunities, bankable projects and pipelines. So all of this will be available on a comprehensive platform which people can actually access and see where the progress is and how they can benefit from countries that are in similar situations as they are.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Emmanuel, you've been focused at Saint-Gobain on the decarbonization of your value chain and by minimizing your own footprint. And so what would you say is your key advice to policymakers who are interested in helping industry increase its competitiveness of their value chain through efficiency?
No, thanks for this great question. I mean, my main messages are around visibility and stability. Visibility means giving a long-term target on energy efficiency and providing some indication on the steps to achieve it. I mean, I can give an example from my country, which is a regulation in France for tertiary buildings, with indications that they should reduce their energy consumption by 30% by 2030, 40% by 2040, 50% by 2050. It's very good and it's efficient level. It's making sure that energy efficiency is addressed in all the building codes in the world. It's one of the goals of the so-called Chaillot Declaration that has been adopted in the first Forum for Buildings and Climate that happened last year in Paris, that has been endorsed by more than 70 countries, and that will be discussed during next COP in Belém, during the first International Intergovernmental Council meeting on buildings and climate. That's around visibility. Then stability. Stability is around not changing the rules every other day. I mean, as it happens far too often, particularly when we are looking at the retrofitting for building supporting schemes in many countries. I mean, in my own country, it's very pregnant.
We don't like rules changed.
Huh?
You don't like the rules changed every day?
I mean, no, I don't like. Why? Why?
Why?
Because changing regulation cannot give confidence, and confidence for the whole value chain, and particularly for getting private finance on board. Stability helps industry to invest, professionals to take time and train, people to plan ahead their renovation, finance people to create new schemes. And stability means concretely to be able to synchronize the regulatory drivers, the finance, and the support at all levels. If I take the current discussion at EU level, it's very EU-centric. The best simplification for energy efficiency, particularly for the built environment, is to allow the players on the ground to implement what is already existing. So said differently, the best omnibus for energy efficiency is no omnibus. It's how I think policymakers can really support European energy efficiency champions and champions across the world.
Thank you. Nikos, in your opening comments, it stuck with me that you said in Greece, 2% of your GDP is spent on energy efficiency, correct? Is that
Cumulative.
Cumulative.
Cumulative investment, yes.
Still impressive. Still impressive. So tell us, from your experience at that national level, how can energy efficiency effectively bring together different aims, climate, affordability, energy security, competitiveness, the whole thing? Because I do think we're the magic potion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, for us, we are a country like other European countries that was hit incredibly hard over the last few years with high energy prices. We are a country that is blessed with great sun and great wind, but we don't have a large production of fossil fuels within the country, and so we were hit especially hard by this energy crisis, and especially when you see energy prices reaching those levels that we saw in 2022 and 23, and even today, really being able to conserve energy to do the same thing that you want to do with just less energy has enormous return on investment and an enormous benefit for businesses and for citizens. And so for us, the reason we've leaned in so hard on energy efficiency is because we see that while we can do a lot, and we have done a lot in terms of pushing the generation of renewables, and we're one of the world leaders in terms of the percent of our electricity that comes from, wind and solar. Last year, close to 50% of our generation coming from wind and solar has turned us from a net electricity exporter to a net electricity importer to a net electricity exporter for the first time in 20-something years. So while this transformation is happening, you're always, have to produce more and more energy if you don't also put a lid on how much energy you're consuming, right? So we see that for households, absolutely essential to address energy insecurity. We see it for businesses that find it increasingly, that have to compete on an international level with higher energy prices. Well, one way to compete on the international level with higher energy prices is to use less energy per unit of your output. So that's what we've seen is companies that have invested in efficiency measures are able to sort of withstand better than others the increase in prices and to remain internationally competitive. So for us, we will continue to make these investments on the sort of demand side of the ledger. We also have other challenges in Greece that we haven't really talked about. This is a sort of buildings and maybe industry-focused discussion, but we have a very similar challenge in transportation. A lot of very old vehicles, again, in part because of the economic crisis that hit Greece, where we have the oldest fleet in terms of buses, trucks, and cars. So you don't think of it necessarily as an efficiency measure, but turning over that fleet into newer vehicles and also electric vehicles has a huge efficiency benefits and huge sort of energy use benefits that we're trying to sort of capture and expedite. So across the board, obviously we're focused a lot on the production of energy, but at the same time trying to find all the different ways across buildings, transportation, industry to reduce the amount of energy needed to achieve the things that we want to achieve is a sort of the flip side to the coin for our strategy.
Thank you. Ingrid, so when Sharif was talking about the Global Energy Efficiency Alliance, one of the things he described was a platform. And really it sounds like, Sharif, and correct me if I'm wrong, a really great tool, right, that those of us in developing Global North can really share with those in the Global South how to do this well, right? What are the best practices that people can learn from? And so the question I have for you is, with your experience in working in emerging economies, what is the most effective measure that you've seen that will promote investment in energy efficiency? We need to learn from you so that we can get this right.
Many thanks. Perhaps as a first thought, I would like to underline the importance of maintaining the political momentum for this subject that was created actually thanks to the COP28 presidency, United for EU, and this was absolutely essential because for the first time, actually, energy efficiency got the level of attention that previously only was actually in the renewable energy sector, and this has been also reiterated this morning. So how do we maintain this momentum now on the road to Belém, COP30? And whatever we can do in the meantime, really, to maintain the subject as a priority subject, I think is really very much of help for any country in the Global South, because it's going to drive attention towards what is doable. We have learned this morning, we have the technologies. We can do risk assessments. It's the less riskier investment than perhaps in other sectors. And it has really a win-win opportunity because you can grow energy security at home with the means that you have at hand. It's much easier than perhaps to invest in other sectors. So, what to do first? It's not that easy to handle because there is no silver bullet. There is not the one trick. This is perhaps also why it is a little bit slower to gain energy efficiency than simply to build a wind park. Or solar panels installments, because you have to change policies, the regulatory frameworks. And this has to be customized to the specific countries. You have to think about the institutional and industry-based capacities. What is missing? What is already available? Where you can actually start to work with? And then finally, it's about the market development. It's about mobilizing the commercial banks, but it's also about creating perhaps production capacities that actually those countries that invest in energy efficiency can also become part of the value chain. I think there is, again, good momentum because nowadays with all the turmoils that we are experiencing in the global economy, the trade disruption, etc., I think all the measures that bring countries in a position to gain competitiveness are gaining more importance and more support. And certainly what we do observe that in international trade, industrialized standards that deal with energy efficiency are more factored in than in the past. So if you invest into energy efficiency as a country, this is also bringing you an add-on when it comes to international trade. So this is another factor that may drive actually more investments into this direction. And finally, we have to make sure that we sufficiently build up a narrative about already the good examples, platforms, collaboration, the leverage effect of certain instruments, to make sure that actually the public funding that it's still available, although it becomes more scarce than in the past, that it actually drives the innovation in this sector. In many and sectors, yeah, perhaps my last point, where should we invest first? I would like to underline what you have also said, the building sector. When it comes to the Global South, most of the new urbanization is going to take place in the Global South. When you add, in addition, how the climate crisis is going to impact the living conditions in urban settings, it becomes obvious that this may be actually a factor that drives energy consumption through the roof.
Yeah.
So this is really an entry point that we have to deal with, unless we invest more into more climate resilient and human-centered urban dwellings that at the same time are more energy efficient. We won't be in a position in many countries really to deal with the energy poverty that is still in existence or growing due to the spike in energy prices that we have experienced first through COVID-19 and later on through the war, the full-fledged invasion war of Russia to the Ukraine. So these factors are still there. And how do we make countries more resilient? And how can we make sure that they still have actually opportunities to increase prosperity? And I think we have to make sure that this narrative is being brought across more forcefully in the political arena.
I'm a big fan of storytelling and ensuring that we're telling the right narratives about this business that we work in. So I'm going to start with you, Judith. You know, in the United States, I often tell people that energy efficiency is actually the largest employer in the energy sector over all the other sectors combined. More than utilities, more than oil and gas combined, it's efficiency. But I want you to tell us a little bit about what are these jobs that we talk about? When we talk about jobs in this sector, what are they? Are they long-term jobs? Are they good paying? Like all the things that people are really interested in when we start talking about these kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to say in a black and white way that a job in energy efficiency is automatically a good job. Right. That is simply not the case. A job can be in a good, worthwhile activity, but the quality of the job for the worker working may be terrible. And I think that's really important to factor into the story.
Expand on that.
Okay. So, as I said, when we're looking at the employment figures, part of the role of energy efficiency is about the maintenance and the guaranteed long-term future of existing jobs, say in heavy industry. Many of those jobs, certainly in Europe and elsewhere, are organized industries with strong collective agreements, with industrial relations, in comparison to the general jobs in the economy, often a higher quality level in terms of jobs. And guaranteeing the future of those jobs has an economic value for society and for the communities that they're in. I take an industry that I know very well, the steel industry. If you compare a job in the steel industry in Europe to probably jobs in the local area where there is a big steel plant, you are often talking about salaries higher, delivering, and the same for the chemicals industry, the same for glass and ceramics and other energy-intensive industries. They're delivering an economic boost to the communities that they're in, those basic foundation industries. So maintaining those jobs long-term through greater energy efficiency has a benefit in terms of maintaining and ensuring the future of good jobs. The renovation wave is slightly different. The construction sector is a very complicated industry with large parts of extremely exploitative employment relations and very difficult labor conditions. And that's why, for us, when I said you need to factor in the social dimension from the beginning, that needs to be factored into the policy framework, because that's the way that you guarantee that you are promoting good quality jobs across the whole of the economy. In our view as trade unions, the key critical element to do that is social conditionalities. And those social conditionalities mean that you leverage the role of the public sector, whether it's public investment, by putting social conditionalities on public investment to guarantee that there's a job quality dimension for how that money is spent, not dissimilar to what we saw in the Inflation Reduction Act in the States, where we saw clear links to retraining, to apprenticeship schemes, to collectively negotiated wage rates in sectors, and actions to ensure that lower income communities were provided with some fiscal benefits in the system. These are social conditionalities. That's perfectly legal and possible to do. But we can also do it through contracts. So public procurement has a major role to play. And if there are criteria, social criteria factored into, non-price criteria factored into into public procurement, then that is also a leverage to ensure that the jobs which are being created are good quality jobs and that they're secure and that they offer people a security which then creates a very positive narrative, a narrative that people can really buy into, that this whole agenda is about really ensuring a fair transition, a just transition for communities and the workers impacted. So there are some key policy levers which you don't have to have a big public budget, but you can use public policy instruments, standards in building codes, standards in contracts to actually leverage in the quality of work and ensure that the jobs which are created are really to the benefit of local communities, but drive forward, create further demand in the economy, and create that positive virtuous circle that I think we're all looking for.
Thank you. So we have about 10 minutes left. So I'm just going to put a question out there, and anyone who would like to answer it should answer it. And I know all of you would have a brilliant answer to this question because I've read your bios. So do not be shy. Tell me one change that you would like to see happen in the next year. So when we come back next year for IEA number 11, one change that you'd like to see that you think could lead to an increase in action on efficiency. So one change that we'd like to see so that when we see Sharif next year, he's going to be able to drop the mic on his first year of his Global Energy Efficiency Alliance. Yes, you should go first since I called you out.
I think, Paula, one of the important things is we talked about the UAE consensus. We talked about the shifting of goalposts. So two major outcomes from the UAE consensus. One was tripling the renewable energy capacity, and we're seeing very good progress on that. The target was to install around 11,000 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. However, how are we doing on the energy efficiency front? We are way behind. Yeah. And now, if we continue with the same rate, 2030, we would require, instead of 11,000, somewhere in the range of 27,000 gigawatts of renewable capacity. So it's a moving target. It's a moving goalpost. And that's why, if you ask me what I would love to see next year, a serious implementation of energy efficiency practices. A key enabler to that, Paula, from my perspective, is the private sector. We have very successful models that we have built in the UAE with the private sector, capital contribution, equity contribution from the private sector, combined with policies from the government, has come up with a model that serves our agenda, our global agenda, our environmental agenda, and at the same time, it's a profitable model for the private sector that makes money, deploys technologies, and at the end of the day, we are serving the public. So this is really an aspiration, I hope, a dream, you might say, but I hope next year when we reconvene over here, I can see some progress on that.
Well, I know we have people in the private sector in this audience, so it should not be an aspiration. It should just be a plan.
Yes.
Who's next? Emmanuel.
Between now and next year, we have the next COP. It has been said, Dubai, the COP in Dubai has been a milestone on energy efficiency. My hope is that Belém will be the next milestone, with very strong commitments of all the governments in the NDCs around energy efficiency, to allow to create the enabling framework for the private companies to invest and to invest massively in the deployment of those solutions.
Judith.
To piggyback on the back of both those comments, I think the key advance is, just as it took a while in the COP negotiations for there to be a recognition that just transition was a topic that should be high on the political agenda, don't wait so long with energy efficiency. And I hope that in Berlin, when it comes to an initiative on energy efficiency, the idea of worker participation and just transition will be factored in to the commitments as a key red line through. Where energy efficiency has delivered the best gains, and I take Germany as an example, the Bundes für Arbeit und Umwelt, which was one of the groundbreaking big renovation programs in Europe in the past. It worked because you had industry, government, and the unions and workers working together. That is a powerful coalition to implement things. So don't wait for too long. We're here, we're ready, and we're happy to bring our ideas to the table.
Ingrid.
Well, I hope that actually within a year we change our perception of the global transition that has to be concluded towards decarbonization, and we give it really a people-centered face, a people-centered face and people-centered vision. And we hope that actually Belém could be a starting point, that we draw much more attention to what is in if we really invest more in energy efficiency, if we invest into the decarbonization of the steel industry, if we invest into actually overcoming poverty in the energy sector, and access to energy is really available for all. And I think this people-centered approach has to deal with the jobs and the skills that are created by the new economy. And if Belém gives actually the signal after Paris, 10 years after Paris, that actually the new economy is actually the economy of the future, because it's much more people-centered than the past economy that is based on fossil fuels. And then I think if people recognize this, and if this becomes the new narrative, then it's obvious that energy efficiency has to be one of the core pillars, because it has so many win-win-win elements, and possibly it's the most economic way to really deal with this new economy.
Okay. Nikos, when I asked this question, I could see the smile on your face, so I know you have something good to say.
I do have something to say. You know, I was thinking, you know, if you think about all the things that we need to do on the energy transition, and you put them on a spectrum, you know, there's the really difficult speculative stuff, there's the stuff in the middle, but then there's the stuff that we've made so much progress that it has a momentum on its own. And I'm thinking of solar, wind, you know, even EVs in certain markets are getting there, where we've made so much progress that as a state, you don't really need to do much. You just need to get out of the way and make sure there's a good environment for the private sector to scale things to a great extent. And it seems to me that we haven't gotten there with energy efficiency. We haven't found that recipe of the business case, the private capital, the incentive structure, the benefits being clear, the regulation, that we haven't found that combination of things that will click and that this thing will take off on its own. And we're still sort of trying to push through the gains sort of one by one, policy by policy. And it seems to me that if we can make, if we come back here in a year, the thing that would make me very happy is if I felt like we have brought those different things together in a way that we can just raise the ambition and the thing will take off on its own, and it doesn't really need us to be pushing it. I think we're still at the phase where we need to be pushing efficiency because all the different components haven't come together to create its own momentum as they have in some other technologies.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of restate what you all have said in my own way. So if it doesn't sound totally familiar, you can let me know. But what I think I hear you're saying, Nico, is that we really do need to bring all of our different factions together if we're going to want to see real progress. And what Sharif is telling us that we really need to be serious about it. Like, we have to be committed to this if this is what we believe. I believe, Emmanuel, what you're saying is that we do need very strong partnerships, public and private, to bring money to the table if we're going to want these kinds of investments. And Ingrid, you're telling us that it needs to be people-centered, starting with people and then working our way out, particularly around jobs and competitiveness. I would also offer many societal benefits, social benefits to energy efficiency. Certainly in the United States, we often talk about efficiency allows people to age in place. Efficiency will allow improve your education, better outcomes at school because you have improved the indoor air quality in your home, reduced instances of asthma. So there are lots of societal benefits that I think we want to be able to capture. Have I gotten everybody? Judith, remind me, because I think I forgot when I went on my tangent.
Workers, workers, workers.
Workers, workers, workers.
That's great.
And so for the last 3 minutes, what I will offer you all is one of my wish is that we all remember that there is a person at the end of this work, that we are not doing something academically, that this is not just a conversation in the air, but that the very first job that I had in this business 35 years ago was taking payments from customers who could not afford the bills that they were getting. And so I know very deeply that what we're all doing is really, really important. And what I hope we do in a year is listen to these fine people's advice and lean in. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Very nice.
Great moderation.
Very
Thank you.
informative.
Thank you.
Pleasure.